Okay, I think we'll get started now. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. So today we will be focusing on all the latest upgrades and updates about this new release. So I have with me our CTO, Stefan, and he would be leading the entire call. He would be talking about some of the latest feature updates and also showing the demo just to give a clear picture on the things. I have muted everybody on the call today, but in case you have any questions, you can write your question in the Q&A section and send it to us. We will try to respond to all the questions, but in case the questions are not covered today, then we will take it up later and send it to you, send the response to you via email. You can also send us questions via email and we will get back to you. Then we are recording this session today, and once the session is over, we'll send you the presentation slides along with the link to the recording. So we will just get started now. I'll hand it over to Stefan to get started on the session.
Thank you, Supriya. Hello, everyone. This is Stefan Schultz speaking. I'm the CTO and the product owner of Creator, which we're today having the release webinar on. So what we are going to talk about in the next half hour is basically a brand new release that we have been working very hard on over the last year. You may wonder, why we are coming up so fast with a 4.0 after 3.0, because 3.0 was just released a year ago with the business activity modeling, business requirement modeling. But actually, right after that, we have been experimenting with some approaches how to improve the connection of the engine to our modeling environment, and we have made some really interesting observations, and I'm happy to say that today I can present to you a first productized version of a new architecture, which essentially, if you think of it, if you have been using a V6 engine for the time being or V8, and we have been figuring out how to put a turbocharger on that motor to make things a bit faster. Now this has a big impact on people, especially so this release will be very interesting for people who are already in deployments with Conformig Creator and that are working with large or very large models. There's a huge impact on the performance when it comes to getting tests out of the test design for such models. Another interesting point here, we have been very active, is also that we have been playing around with some new technology in our scripting backends when it comes to the automating the automation, which we call Conformiq Intelligent Test Automation. So there's some new technology that basically uses artificial intelligence techniques to convert things that have not been converted before to automation, directly to automation. So basically, the highlights here clearly is around the new scalable architecture. So again, as I've been trying to say in my intro, it's a completely different approach how to process creator models, and that in itself is giving us not only right now a lot of speed up, which many people will appreciate, but also it prepares us for creating a platform for the future. And there's a lot of new features that are now in the pipeline that will come in the subsequent releases that we are now enabled by this new architecture. So some of these things, for example, is a new realization of test case persistence, and which in turn will increase the lifetime of generated tests significantly, and also the identification of the optimal test data are some very interesting topics that are going to come out with the next releases. The thing that you will right away notice is the higher performance. So especially when it comes to model loading, meaning the loading of the model for test generation purposes, and with that associated the update of test target view is basically instant now. Obviously, if you have some very, very large models, it may take more than a minute, but compared to the current 3.x versions and earlier versions, you will not believe your eyes. And I will show that in a demo in a moment. And the other thing, of course, is that there has been dramatic reductions in the test generation times for all models. Basically, we can really say now, and we're working with some very large models from our customers here, that we can get the final results within 10 minutes of test generation time. And that's a big achievement. Yes, it has been enabled basically by the new architecture. And finally, again, the intelligent test automation. This is actually this is really again, only a first step in our release of this technology. We have much bigger ideas how to take that much further in our toolchain. This one here is something that we have been working with our customers already for the past year, and are now productizing and making available to everybody. So this uses natural language processing techniques to especially generate custom actions, automation for custom action, business action, and external circumstances, which classically have not been automated, right? Because when it comes to exporting such functions, it was not always clear how to do that, but now we have actually been figuring out a very interesting way how to make that very simple and automatic. And this intelligent test automation is very easy to use. So it is an Excel-based interface that I will demo to you, where you can actually tune, even without having any programming experience, this connection to your test automation frameworks. And always, I want to point out and emphasize that this is a technology that we now see in the product, but again, it has been already used in custom integrations. So feel free to contact us to, get more ideas about other kind of integrations that have been already updated to use this KITA, which is the Conformiq Intelligent Test Automation. So first thing, I will just show you a very quick hands-on demo. This will be very simple. It just goes around the standard process as we have been used to it from all the other creator versions, but I will just point out some of the things that are different in this release. So as you can see here, the look and feel has not changed. In general, there's no really new features here that are striking in the new release. So for example, if I just follow my standard process and I create a simple example, we have the file structure is the same, the look and feel of the project is just exactly the same. The modeling is the same, the editor is the same. Now the things start changing when you go to the test design view, right? So for example, here when we're loading the model, we're seeing here now that there is some changes in the progress panel view where a lot of reporting has been changed, and there's now a lot more accurate information in terms of what takes how many seconds. So I invite you to load this model in another version, and this is a dead simple model. So this actually, is loaded within 0 seconds, and the final notification is 2 seconds later. But we have been experimenting also with other models where basically I have not yet seen a model that will take more than let's say 30 seconds to load for test generation. So what the test generation does, just as a refresher, right, it starts to populate and extract all of our test targets for test generation, right? So actually, there is an idea here already in Conformig that in subsequent releases we may just totally eliminate the load model button and just load the model always based on save, but this still has to be decided. At the moment, we still keep the load button. So when we generate test cases, here again, this looks very much the same as it has been before. It is just that these timestamps that you will be seeing are completely different, right? So there is just, so the reporting is the same. The test cases that are generated, there have been some improvements on the test targets. So for example, here the reporting of the test targets here has been improved by making it a little bit more explicitly like where exactly these activities are located when they're in a subdiagram. And so there have been some minor changes to improve a bit the usability also of this view. And then the last step is also still the same, where we have to attach the scripting backend. So let's take here Excel scripter, Selenium Java as some examples, which are scripters we've had before already. Right? And when we then export the test cases, then these test cases are exported. There are some changes here. So as part of 4.0, there are some things that still have not made this first release, but will come in the subsequent releases. So one thing, for example, is that usually there is some automatic test description generated in case there's narrative tags or narrative actions in your model. This automatically generated descriptions, for example, if we look here at the model, we have here narrative action. We have here narrative action, right? In the older version, these narratives appear in the test description. At this point, we're not generating this automatic test description. However, the narrative information is available to the scripters. So if you're processing narrative state actions, that is there. It's just that this summary, which was automatically generated, is in this version not yet produced and will come in subsequent versions. Similar is when in the intelligent test case naming selects a name, this will not pick the narrative actions at this point. So, but the tests are the same. That's the main point. And then we can render the tests, and as always, we get the outputs here. For example, the Selenium test suite, which is over here. The tests and the format are exactly the same as in all the other versions, right? No changes here. Same thing in Selenium Java. You know, we are still having TestNG based, ready for automation. The test cases, page object model. Sure, the login page. Let's take a look at that. So these are all still basically generated in the same way as before, and it's completely compatible. So that's really it, and that's 4.0 already in a nutshell. It may not sound like much, but I mean, if you use and apply this on your own models, you will soon see that, you know, the time it takes, the turnaround time to go from model changes to executable test cases is drastically reduced on all models. Okay. If you have any questions, as Supriya has said earlier, please just use the Q&A session. I also, you know, put them as they come to your mind so that we can work them off later. So this was the first introduction to 4.0, how loading, test generation, and export of the test cases works. Secondly, I want to talk about the other big feature, which is conforming intelligent test automation. Now, this is a technology which right now is deployed in Scripter, but also we're using this also as part of the import. Well, it's on the way of being integrated into other integrations. So the idea here is that the scripting backends that Conformiq uses, some of them, the ones that are Kita enabled, they will be able to analyze text and based on that extract what kind of automation actions are suitable for that text. So this is called natural language processing, and these cases come, for example, when your models have business actions which are pure text, or custom actions which generate pure text, or external circumstances. Kita also includes the mapping of GUI actions, as you will see in a moment. So if you have fill form actions, display screen, click the button, all of that, but that's a separate mapping that's not using the natural language processing. This is a bit easier. So this is a big change because it not only allows us to, you know, increase the speed of getting the fully automatic test suites where you can just execute at the click of a button, but it also enables us to maintain or customize the bindings to own custom frameworks by simply editing an Excel sheet, right? So we have already been kind of starting pilots and developing this closely with two of our partners, and in these deployments we have seen a significant reduction of the efforts required to implement custom actions, because obviously there is still some text that will come up that has no automation there, which is in the 20%, right? But the majority of the way how testers write, especially manual observations, manual actions, right? That has been reduced by 80% by finding the automation action using natural language processing. So when we come to the demo of this feature, there's basically two scripters I want to show you. So right now, part of the Conformig install, the creator installer, we have two scripters. One is the so-called transformer scripter. Probably most of you know that also Conformig, besides creator, has another product for those who don't have any execution. It's called Conformig Transformer, which is basically a Eclipse-based wrapper around Selenium and also U of T. And I will demo just with you as an example case all the way to execution for this. But then also, for example, we've added a new kind of a new productized scripting backend for the robot framework, which is an open source framework, which we see increasingly being used by others. And that shows you just how we can also apply the Kita technologies in another context. And again, the note here just says, if you're interested in some scripter that is, obviously there's these two here, but we have more already today that are custom for customers. And if there's other scripters you have any questions about, we're happy to have a discussion with you about that. So in order to show you the transformer scripter, I have here a project which is our kind of internal demo application, which is called the Enterprise Shopping Demo. So it's a model which is very close to the simple web application, but this is actually a real application which is behind it. So here you see actually there is some custom actions which are in there. There is GUI actions, etc. Right? Now what I do is I simply include this transformer scripter. And when you have a Kita-based scripter, there's a couple of more configuration options that will pop up. We have an automatic impact analysis. This will basically tell you more about how the test in successive exports. So when you export to test automation, then you run your regression, then you run it again, and then you wonder what's the change between the last time that I rendered my test and now between the test cases. And this impact analysis generates, I will show you a kind of summary file that is should be very interesting for you to understand how the test set is changing and evolving. And then, for example, in the transformer case, we have two different ways of automating. So right now we have Selenium selected. Transformer Kita allows actually various approaches for automation, so action-driven as well as keyword-driven and component-driven. The transformer scripter supports these two. So keyword-driven means that we're mapping actually a creator action into a keyword in the execution, right? A component. And component-driven means we're mapping actually activities, so a bunch of creator actions into one single component. Okay. So this is the scripter. I generate the tests. That should be fast, as we know from the previous session. So loading the model, generating the test is a simple model. So and then I go and I will now render the tests with the transformer scripter. So what will happen is we get firstly an impact analysis. So this file here basically tells us like these files now we have exported for the first time. They have all the status new. We see the Conformig ID that's shown in the Conformig interface, and there's actually a more persistent ID that we show, which allows us to kind of identify in later interface, even if the Conformig ID changes, but the kind of gist of the test is the same, that the test ID will be retained. This is documented in the manual, by the way, if you're interested in details. And the second thing is, of course, the output from the transformer scripter. So as with any other Kita scripter, you get these two files here, which are your main interface, which is GUI action mapping and the NLP mapping, right? So GUI action mapping is for Kita-based scripters. Here, basically, you can select what is the automation action in my framework that will be handled to, say, click a link. Well, in Transformer Selenium, that is click. Right. So if you have another action in your framework, then you put that there. And here we have some kind of default Selenium locator tab that's supported as well. So this is pretty simple. Notice also here that the Kita allows you to map multiple technologies. So you can map to web or Ajax or desktop or mobile. If the same action is used in different contexts and for different technologies differently, you can specify this here. So basically what Kita will do is it will read this Excel file and basically say, what rule has the user given me? So what rule have you taught me in order to convert this into automation, and you will select it from there. Similar is the NLP, which is a little bit more sophisticated, obviously, because we're doing language processing. The main sheet here is this first one. So this is how it comes out of the box, comes pre-generated. You can, of course, extend the sheet, and even Kita will learn. That means if there's a action, like a custom action text or a business action that is not containing these words, like these text phrases, it will add that to the end and will ask you how to map it, right? So that's the learning part of it. So, but here, this is the learning. This is the mappings that are coming as part of the pre-configured package scripter. So how you should read this, if my sentence contains click, right, then it will be a click action used for that sentence to automate it. If it contains click and wait with all of these words, and it will map it there. And here we need to know that the Kita will apply the most words first and then converge towards the smaller words. So it will first check, is there click and wait, and only after that, okay, is there click, right? So all these text phrases will be tried, and as it figures out how they will be mapped, they are mapped, right? And then there's also a way how you can actually directly kind of map custom actions or business actions to library actions in your framework in case you want to have a direct mapping, which is without natural language mapping. And then here is a little bit more sophisticated. You can actually influence the way how Kita does natural processing by influencing its vocabulary that it uses to identify what are the objects, what are the actions that I'm trying to map. Right. So that in a nutshell is the settings. So these settings have been used to produce this XML file. So let me just very quickly here create a transformer project. Here's the execute. Right. So again, not all of you are using this, but it's just an example. Imagine you're using your robot framework, your UFT, whatever other framework you're doing. So what I do in Transformer now is that I say I want to import my Transformer XML that has been generated by the scripter. So I go to my execution to demo, scripter, boom. Then I'm importing that. Okay, then I will see, okay, there were these tests. What you will find is that, okay, I'm not selecting the project. If I select back my project, you see these are the 5 tests. Now if I go back to my Transformer project and I here, for example, open this, I have the exact same tests, and then I can, for example, see here these are the actions. This is an action based, so every creator action has a keyword. This is how this works. If we want to look at a keyword, let's say click the start link, here you see the data that's being passed in. This is what Conformiq has generated. You can add additional data sets. Okay, if you want to see how a keyword looks like, this keyword start hyperlink in the start screen has been generated now using Kita with its automation action. So this is the Kita part here, where it has identified, okay, the automation action is click, and actually the object information even was provided in the model. So we are ready for execution. And basically then, let me see if I can do this fast enough. One thing I still need to swap here because I don't have Firefox. So I need to select Chrome as my choice for execution. And then I execute this test. And that should basically, yes, the test was too fast on my other screen. I'm sorry about that. But the test that has executed here, actually, it has entered the screen. It has clicked the screen. It has entered a bad product name and a bad thing, and then has gotten an error. Okay. So this is how Kita is supposed to work. This is how we want you to understand Kita, that basically this is the way how you can work also with other scripters. So let's, for example, go back to our project here. Let's close these things to make our place a little bit cleaner. So let's use instead the robot scripter to render tests. So from our model, which is the shopping ID. So let's go to the test design phase to see, okay, so here we see now the robot framework scripter has gone. Now the robot framework scripter works a bit different. So here this is based on Python actually. So we see again, there's the same sheets there. So if we open the natural language mapping for the robot framework, it has similar, but now of course what's different are the automation actions, right? So robot uses Python, uses a predefined set of library elements, and then this is of course different. So, and then again, tests are generated, so we can look at this here. So these example test cases with the parameters and the data, and then the keywords are, oops, sorry about that. Okay, so keywords we see here also are generated in terms of, in the same way that we've seen in Transformer, but now this time it is just in the robot notation, which is based on Python. Okay, so this is how Keto works, and here this is, by the way, if you see here, the keywords are based on the activities and not based on the actions. That's different, right? In robot, we always map only activities. It's just a choice that we have taken in the robot scripter because that's what our customers have been requesting. Yeah, but otherwise, again, it's interesting stuff. Invite you to play around with it. Read the manual about how Keto works, how it's being configured, how you work with it, but you key out the Excel sheets here, okay? So much for Keto. Again, if you have any questions now, make sure you put them into the chat so that we can answer them later. Let me go, how do I bring back yeah. Okay, and then before we wrap up here, so there is some caveats to 4.0. So 4.0 is a huge change. So like I said before, Conformig has worked over the past year feverishly in overtime to produce the general update, but it turns out that Creator allows a lot of stuff in modeling, and it has a lot of test generation features. So instead of waiting with this release further, we have decided to make this 4.0 release with a 90% feature complete product, right? So there is some things that are different and some things that will be supported later. And some of you who have been part of a beta program, for example, have been already experiencing is for some projects, when you update them to 4.0, you will get live check errors, right? So this is because some of the things are not yet supported and they come later. So, but what I can assure you is if you're doing testing via web, so with GUI interfaces, for example, for web, desktop or mobile, mainframe, or even mainframe and backend interfaces, if that appears in your model, you're all set. That's 100%. The things where we have some, what we see here, some of the more advanced features in the modeling language are not yet supported, and web service API testing is something that unfortunately we had to postpone to the next release. So I will give in a demo you some kind of ideas what you can do to go to 4.0 in order to deal with these live check errors, because not all of them have quick fixes, right? So let's go to review what's not yet there, what will be there in later releases. So the first one, which we have heard also back from our customers, is this select row from external spreadsheet. Now, within Conformiq, we don't have a single customer model that actually uses select row, but actually once we have released it for beta testing, we figure out that actually more people than we anticipated use it. So this is the top priority to resolve first, and it may even be so that a 4.0.1 will be released fairly soon, I mean, in a soonish time frame to get this actually implemented. So the plan is not to discontinue it, but to keep it. But if you have this in your model, you will not be able to load the model for now. And I will show you how you can also work around that. So the other thing is, if you have any kind of complex messages, so meaning messages that contain, you know, optional fields or even fields with multiple occurrences, any number of fields, these messages are not currently supported for test generation with the new architecture. Again, this is a high priority in our pipeline to do it. This unfortunately does touch the API testing people. Whenever you import REST APIs, whenever you import SOAP APIs, this is something where I would tell you today, continue using 3.1, wait for 4.1 to come out. Exploratory testing coverage and data distribution are some more advanced test generation options. Some of them actually have been developed to circumvent some or to reduce test generation time. So arguably with 4.0 we're trying to solve that in another way by just making test generation fast in general, right? So again, I will show you how to work with this. The one thing also that in practice is not used very heavily, but anyway, it is there in our tool, is the test case steps view. Where we have at this point not a correct data, the messages are not in sync with the model that you will see there. So also for that, there's a workaround. And then what I've already showed you before is the test descriptions are not there. But these are all the things that really are lacking that will be still coming. On top of it, we've been using this break to 4.0 to discontinue some things that we have been wanting to discontinue for some time. So there's the so-called deprecated combinatorial data coverage options. today you get warnings. Basically, you will get in 4.0 errors, and you will just say, don't use the data coverage option, use the data coverage action, right? I will show you how that works. Another thing is that toString, so basically enum to string, number to string, date to string, any kind of these toString functions have been used in some of the more advanced models quite heavily, but also in places where they should not have been used. So it's fine to use all of these conversion functions as part of like name tags, narrative actions, etc., or even in output actions. But actually, when it comes to inputs or conditions, we should not be using these conversion functions. Again, we have seen some customer models. Some use it heavily, others don't use it. So again, it may apply to you. And then there's really some more of the exotic features that we do not believe have a clear definition in the language, and it's safer to not support them rather than to support them. So let me just go into quick demos about some of this. Before I go into any of this, please understand, it is always advisable to back up your system before you do the conversion, meaning to just take a backup and then you can go back to it in case you don't like it, right? So the backup is the classic standard message we give. The good news is that even if you have updated a project and then for some reason you feel like, oh, I have too many live check errors, I want to go back and I don't want to fix them, right? Then you can even do that, right? And I will show that very quickly too. So let me just go through some of these things. Again, you have to understand these are minor things. These are advanced modeling concepts and test generation actions. I don't expect most users to be facing these issues. Okay, so let's go live through this. Let's close these projects that we have been working with. So I have already kind of created some funny projects. What you have to believe me is that in 3.1, these open perfectly and generate tests perfectly, right? So what happens when I open this project? It tells me, when I have a 3.1 project, I get this dialog. I say, okay, do the automatic update. So when the automatic update is done, it's done, okay? But then I see, oh, there's an error now. That error was not there in 3.1, right? So I go and double click on this, and now I see, I've been using the data coverage option, right? I've been saying all combinations here. Okay, this is a login diagram. So basically here is a fill form, which is an input constraint where I'm trying to say, give me all the combinations, right? So now this feature earlier generated a warning. Now it's generating an error. So what I can do here, this is easy. I can say, give me the combinatorial action. So it updates it and does the alternative way of modeling, which is to not have anything here, but to have instead a custom action which references the fill form action. Boom, and you're done, right? And then you can go to load your model and generate your test cases. Okay? And let's generate the test. Boom. So I get 12 tests with all kinds of combinations. So this is exactly the same model. This is a very trivial update. So this is an error you should not really be worrying about. Okay, let's close this one. Okay, so now there are the other thing, enum to string, right? Some of you, if you're on the call, are using this function, and others of you maybe don't use it heavily. But I have modified this example a bit just to make it, just to show it, right? So in order to make this example more clear, I have added, usually it's only username and password, added another field to the form, which is user type. That user type already exists there for the database, but part of this example. But right now, think of it, there's a drop-down, which is linked to an enumeration, which is a user type, which can either be admin or user. So when you fill out this form, this is another field. Right, so in my model, I fill out this form, right? And here I have a first error, because something that I can do with, I can even, when I have a string field, let's say the password, even though that is not of enumeration type, that's a string field, I can assign blindly some enumeration value. So this is an error now, because it's not, this is an input action, and here we cannot use this value to string. So now, how could I remodel this? It's very simple. I can say remove this and put the string here instead of the enum value, right? So it's still the exact same thing that I've modeled before, but instead of modeling it, taking an enum value and converting it, I have now put the literal string. Okay? So now I save it, that error is gone. I still have 2 more errors. So now here, there are some kind of conditions that I've seen in some of your models. So this is not just cooked up. I've seen this. We're seeing here is I'm comparing 2 enumeration. I'm comparing, is the user type field in my form actually equal to admin? But to do the condition, I convert into string first, right? Or a variant of this, of course. The thing is, the question is, so you're doing a string condition with the enum values. So the obvious answer here is, why don't we just compare the enums directly, right? So, but before I do that, there's a variant of this where you can just say, I want to compare here to an enum value to a string, right? But I mean, instead what we should be doing is we should be comparing enum to enum and not enum to, via string to some other string, right? So let me just show you how this works. You copy the enum value, which is the field. You paste it here. So now you can clear that if you want. So now you're saying, I'm not comparing a string, but I'm comparing the enum. And then when you double click, you already get the values. And now this comparison is the same as you did before with string, but now you're actually comparing enum to enum, right? So similarly, other conversions can be done. These are not all of the cases, but this is just to tell you enum to string conversions or number to string or what have you can be resolved this way. It's not easy to make a general quick fix for this. If you have any questions, contact us. We help you through this, okay? But the main thing is try to actually base conditions on enums, and whenever you have a string field, use strings and not enums. That's a simple advice. Now, I think we have time for one more, which is the select row. I know some people have been eager to hear about it. Again, I opened this project and I had some bad luck. Again, sorry, let me close this. So I have an error. Okay, so this is my worst day. Now here I've modified the login model to read there's this user's CSV file, right? I mean, I can open this. See, this is actually a CSV file. It's not even Excel. So it's username, password, ABC, Supriya, Bangalore, whatever, right? So there's 3 pairs. Now, in my model today that works beautifully with 3.1, right? I say I want to read this spreadsheet, and then I want to go in here and put the username value into the username and the password value into the password. Right? So again, if you have never used select row function, then don't worry about this. If you are a user of select row, you know how this works. Okay. So now, what you don't probably know is that select row is the cousin of the custom action, right? It has been introduced some releases ago in order to simplify the modeling by using external spreadsheet data and using this, right? So there's an alternative way of modeling this. So if you want, you can remodel this using a custom input action. But again, you should assess like how urgent is this remodeling, because most likely you're not going to model it yet back again once we support it. Again, select row is one of these features that will come back. So let me just quickly show this. What you do is you basically select sorry, let's use rather this diagram here because we have an input. Okay, so we create a custom action, which is this funny thing here. So read users, okay? All right. Okay, so then I have 2 fields, and I have to pick now the names must be exactly as in my spreadsheet. So that is username, and that is password. And it's not password as it is elsewhere. Okay, then I need to do the rest. I need to connect it to an input interface, which I luckily have for the demo purpose. We just take whatever we have. Short form it wants to have, okay, we give something, and then the text. Technically, I don't want to see this action in my output, so what I will just do is a nasty trick. I will just say I will not print out anything from this because it's just reading a spreadsheet and redirecting it. So when I output to Excel, there's no output, okay? So now I save this. I have the custom action. Again, custom actions are, I know, some advanced stuff. If you have never created custom action, you probably want to rewatch this video. then we go here. Now here we have the select row. So what I need to do basically is I need to go into the config interface. Here is my read users that I created. I need to put it at the same place where I have, and then I have to read the data from the spreadsheet file, right? So this is very similar to what we have, and here's the users file. So now I've read the file. Now I can safely already remove this piece and this piece, because that is replacing the reading of the spreadsheet, right? So now I need to use it. Now, right now I'm using the stuff read from the select row action. So I need to actually here go through it, clear it, create a form, and now I select basically for my read users action the field that I want to assign here, right? And then of course I need to select the action result, right? And then I can actually do some trick here to make it fast. I paste it, and then I say I want to have the password here, right? Boom. I save it. I'm done. Okay. So for remodeling select row, 2 steps, well, 3 steps. Create a custom action that reflects your spreadsheet that you're trying to read, right? Number 2, add that spreadsheet here, link it to the spreadsheet that you have. And number 3, update the occurrences where you use the data from select row to actually use the custom action fields instead of using the columns from the spreadsheet row action. Okay, and with that, that's I think the last update that I want to show, because we're a bit short on time. There's the more exotic thing that I could be showing, but I would like to rather now go into the questions and answer session. So, okay.
Stephen, we have one question around Kita.
Sure, yes, I will get to it. Okay, the question is Kita able to generate code for handling alerts, switch to new browser, or from or between iframes? So yes, it is, right? I mean, let me just show you this project here back. It is just about how you configure it to do the mapping. So I'm sorry, open project. So let's go to the robot for example, right? So if you say, just like you have here, let's say a click link goes to a click link. If you have actually here some words that should be saying switch to iframe or whatever other, sorry, I know I lost, it's already marked as answered. So if you have switch to new browser, right? If you have a function switch to new browser, so naturally, the way how you would, let's put it here, switch to new, let's assume you have such an automation action. So let's say it is for web technology. Now you tell me what word should be in the sentence so that you actually automate it using switch to new browser. Probably maybe it is when the sentence says switch to new browser, right? So whenever it finds a custom action, and within that a sentence that says switch to new browser, it will actually invoke this function, right? And this is obviously this is an input action, and this does not require any default locator, as there's no object for this function, right? So this is how you have basically now customized for your framework this stuff. And basically here, it does not matter, are these words in a business action, like in a business activity, or do they come in an external circumstance, or do they come in a custom action, right? And the same thing goes for all your other functions, right? You just need to specify what type of text, and it can be very specific text, it can be 1 word or 2 words. For example, here, like input text, whenever, right now the default configuration is whenever I see set in a sentence, I put input text. And maybe that is actually, maybe I want to change that because that's quite relaxed, right? I mean, I can also have set, set my checkbox or something, right? Maybe this is too much oriented towards, text input. So then I have to change this mapping and find a better function. Okay. Is there any other questions we could have? So by adding this row, so I can teach other mappings to Kita, right? And all I need to do then is to re-render. So once I've updated my spreadsheet, then I need to go back and say re-render, my tests. So with the robot scripter. So then I would have to press the button here again, and then it would if there is such an action in the model, it will apply the mapping. Yes. Any other questions, please? Okay. It seems we're good for the time being. Again, feel free to contact us if you have any questions. And I hope everybody is switching to 4.0. The thing is, I don't know any person who has wanted to go back to 3.1 once they were good to go in 4.0, because you get very easily used to these performance times, and you never think backwards. So again, be ready for, if you're a user in an existing deployment already, you have to be ready to understand that there may be some minor changes you may need to do, but it's not on all of the projects. And once you figure out how to fix it in one place, most likely in many other places you will know how to fix it. Otherwise, contact your support staff and they will be happy to help you.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining, and thanks Stefan. We can, if there are no further questions, we will close the call, and I will share the link of the recording with everybody. Thanks.